How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chaf Aleph, Daf 21 of Masechta Sanhedrin. Friends, your friends. Friends, this is a big one. A big old Daf. Big old Daf. It's like, Masechta Tainis, Masechta Megillah. Big Daf. Not particularly difficult. A lot of interesting stuff, but big. We're going to start at the Mishnah on Daf Chaf Aleph, Amid Aleph, about 5 lines into the page, and I'd like to get to the Mishnah on Daf Chav Beis, almost about halfway down Chav Beis Amud Aleph. So there's a lot I want to get through. I think this might be a long daf, but there's going to be some interesting things here. It says the Mishnah on Daf Chav Aleph Amud Aleph Liyarbelo Yinoshim El Shmona Esrei. So a king is limited at 18 wives. A king can have 18 wives. No matter what, there's a quota of 18, he's allowed to have up to 18 wives. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda says you can actually have more than 18 wives, just under the condition, says Libo, just that they can't lead him astray. Just that they can't lead him astray. So he can have 18 wives, that's for sure. At least this is the way I understand it. He can have 18 wives, that's for sure. Now, if he wants to have more than 18 wives, that's all fine and good, but just make sure that the extras are not going to lead him astray. Reb Shimon says, so interestingly, Reb Shimon says that actually this 18 thing, nothing's guaranteed. Even if he has one wife and she's going to lead him astray, so don't even have one. Don't have any wives. So why does it say don't have too many wives? Meaning that 18 is the cap. Don't have a 19th, even if she's as amazing as Abigail. No, 18 is the cap. Okay. So the way I understand the machlokes between Tanna Kamma, Reb Yehuda, and Reb Shimon. The Tanna Kamma says, look, you're allowed to have 18 wives. That's that. Okay, simple. A king can have up to 18 wives. Rabbi Yehuda says, yes, a king can have up to 18 wives, but actually he can have even more than that as long as they don't make him go astray. Reb Shimon says, actually, this 18 thing is not guaranteed. I mean, even if one wife is going to make him go astray, so don't have any wives at all. So let's chat with Lo Yarba, don't have too many. That you can't. That once you hit 18, it's capped. Even if you can handle a 19th or a 20th or a 21st, it's capped at 18. Even if she's like Abigail, nit. Now the Gemara asks an interesting question. Interesting. So if Yehuda is saying, look, you can actually have. It says lo yarba lo noshim. Actually, you can have more. Just you have to make sure that they're not going to lead you astray. So even though it says don't have more, Rabbi Yehuda says, actually, I'll tell you, there's a reason why you can't have too many wives, because they'll make you go astray. But as long as you're not going to go astray, so you can have more wives. He's dorish time in the Qur'an. He's getting into the rationale behind the pasuk. The pasuk says, don't have too many wives, but why? Rabbi says, well, the reason is because they'll make you go astray. But if it's not going to make you go astray, so you can have more. Whereas Reb Shimon is saying, no, you can't have more. And he's therefore saying, lo plug. That when the Torah says he can't have more than 18, he can't have more than 18. We're going to get into the numbers soon, but they said when you can't have too many wives, you can't have too many wives, that's that. Lo darish time of the Torah. He's not getting into the rationale behind the pasuk. No. If the Torah says no, the Torah says no. So again, so Lemeimra, the Rabbi Yehuda darish time of the Torah. So that's that Rabbi Yehuda is darish time of the Torah, and therefore he says you can have even more than 18. Rabbi Shimon lo darish time of the Torah, and Rabbi Shimon doesn't get into the rationale behind the psukim, and therefore he says it's capped at 18. But we hear punkt fakert. The Tana that we learned about Almone, the pasuk says lo sachbo beged almone. The pasuk says that you can't take a collateral from a deposit or collateral from a security from a widow. Okay, Pashut lo sachbo beged almone. You can't take a collateral from a widow. So it says the Braise almone bein shiania bein shiashir ein mamashkin anosa. So the Tanna Kamma, Shenemar, Losachbo Beged Almana div Rabbi Yehuda. This is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. The Rabbi Yehuda says it's a low plug. It's poshit a low plug. That the pasuk says Losachbo Beged Almana. Don't take a collateral from a widow. So that's it. That's it. Pretty clear. Don't take a collateral from a widow. No ifs, buts, no exceptions, no nothings. Again, Amona ben she'anira, whether she's poor, ben she'ashira, whether she's wealthy, makes no difference. Ein memashkin anos. You don't take a collateral from her. Shenemar, as the Apostle says, lo sachbo beged amona. You don't take a collateral from a widow. That's Rabbi's opinion. He's not dorish time of the Korah. He's not getting into rationales. No. The Pasuk says no. The Pasuk says no. That's that. Low plug. No exceptions. Reb Shimon says, wait a second. Why? Why does the Pasuk say l'sachbo beged amona? Well, Reb Shimon Omer ashira memashkin enosa. No, if she's wealthy, sure, you could take a collateral from her. Aniya ein memashkin enosa. But if she's poor, then we can't take a collateral from her because you have to return it to her. You're going to give her a bad name with her neighbors. And we say, Mike, what is this bad name with the neighbors thing? This is what Shimon is saying. Well, when it comes to a poor widow, if you give her a collateral, but she, right, if it's her clothing, right, if it's her clothing, so let's say it's her pajamas, right? So then if it's her pajamas that you're taking as collateral, and she's poor and she doesn't have any other pajamas, where you're going to have to go back there every single night to give it back to her. You're going to have to give it back to her. And then the Yentis, her neighbors, the Yentis intelligence services, they're going to get together with all the other agents on Shabbos afternoon in the bungalow colony with Diet Coke and low-fat mandel bread before the Shmir Salosh and Shir. And they're going to start talking, the widow, the poor widow. I know she's a poor widow, but, also, some guy's been coming over every night. Anyways, so Reb Shimon is Dorish time of the Crow. Reb Shimon is saying, well, I know the Pasuk says, Lo sachbo beged amona. I know the Pasuk doesn't make any exceptions. I know the Pasuk says pretty explicitly, no collaterals for widows. But why? Reb Shimon says, why? Well, because... Well, if she's poor, well then the collateraler is going to have to return the collateral every single night, and then people, the entists, are going to start talking. But if she's wealthy, then there's nothing to be concerned about because she has other pajamas, so it doesn't have to be returned every night. So if Reb Shimon gets into the rationale and he says, actually, this halacha only applies to poor people, to poor widows. Reb Yehuda lo darish time in the Korah. Reb Yehuda says low plug, that makes no difference. No collaterals for widows is not Dorish time of the Korah. He's not getting into the reasons behind the psukim. Reb Shimon Dorish time of the Korah, whereas Reb Shimon is getting into the reasons, and he's saying that no collaterals really is only relevant for a poor widow who would have to get it back every night. Yet in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda is the one who's saying, well, what's the reason why you can't have too many wives? Because you'll make them go astray, but if they're not going to make them go astray, you can have more. So it sounds like in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda is the one who's getting into the rationale. Whereas Rabbi Shimon says it's capped. So Ba'al Rabbi Yehuda loy dorish time of the cross. So really, it's like we have by the collateral. Rabbi Yehuda is a low plug guy. He's not Dorish time of the Korah. The Pasuk says no collaterals for widows, no collaterals for widows, no exceptions. But it's different over here when it comes to a king having too many wives. The mefarish time of the Korah, the Pasuk itself explains it for us. It says, Matam liyarbelo noshim, mishum d'lo yosu levavo. The Pasuk Pashut says, V'lo yarbelo noshim, v'lo yosu levavo. Azoi. The Pasuk says, a king should not have too many wives so that he won't go astray. So the Pasuk is handing it to us on a silver platter, says Rabbi Yehuda. And therefore, Memele, if the Pasuk is explicitly, he's explaining it so clearly, the rationale for why not to have so many wives, well then why should we not listen and say, okay, so it says you don't have too many wives so you don't go astray. Okay, well clearly then if you're not going to go astray, have as many wives as you want. But in a place like Lo sachbo beged amona, where there's no rationale explicitly there, we're not going to start reading into it. Reb Shimon Amalach, and Reb Shimon who says Dorish time of the Korah, so he's going to argue, look, Michdei ba'amad Doshin time of the Korah. Look, in general, we are Dorish time of the Korah, as Reb Shimon demonstrated by Lo sachbo beged amona. The Pasuk says you can't take a collateral from a widow, and Reb Shimon starts having a field trip And he starts saying, well, how come that is? It's because he has to return it. He gets it right, and then he concludes that it really only applies to poor widows, not wealthy widows. So he's Dorish Tarmid Dekra. The Pasuk says no collaterals for widows, and he's all of a sudden trying to figure out why and making different Chidushei Torah based on his conclusions. But in this case, however, by the too many wives for the king, he is not Dorish Tarmid Dekra because look. The pasuk over here is too explicit. It's saying, right? It says li'arbelo noshim v'li'aser levavo. Look, really, look. If the pasuk just said lo yarbelo noshim, says Reb Shimon, if it just says he can't have too many wives, then I would start saying, how come? Oh, it must be because li'aser libo. What if he's not going to? But the pasuk is kind of preventing us from being Dorish Tarmid Dekra by telling it to us explicitly. Kilu Dorish Tarmid Dekra is by losachbo beged amonu. The pasuk only says "Losachbo beged amana" and leaves it up to us to figure out. So Reb Shimon says, okay, so we do go and figure it out. But over here, the pasuk isn't letting us figure it out. It's telling us explicitly. It's saying, don't have too many wives so you don't go astray. So if that's the case, it's like, well, that's weird. You basically took it away from us. We can no longer be Dorish Tarmid Dekra. Right? If the pasuk would have just said, don't have too many wives, well, then we'll start reading into it. But by the Torah explicitly explaining why, well, then, okay, there's nothing for us to do anymore, so we're not going to be Dorish Tarmid Dekra. And therefore it says, okay, don't have too many wives, don't have too many wives. Yeah, in general we would be Dorish Tarmid Dekra according to Reb Shimon, but therefore, since in general we are Dorish Tarmid Dekra, what the pasuk should have simply said is, Lo yarbe lo noshim. He shouldn't have too many wives. And then I'll try to figure out how come. Matam lo yarbe. Why not? Mishum de lo yaser. Oh, because it's going to make him go astray. Lo yaser lamadis. And why does the pasuk explicitly say lo yaser? Well, because it's to teach that afilu achas mesiras libo harei lo yiseenu. Well, to say that even if one is going to for the Joshua, even if one is going to make him go astray, so don't even marry that one. Then why does it say don't have too many? Even if more than 8, right? Even if she's as great as Abigail, still it would be capped at 18. And how do we know? Where is this derived from that a king is allowed to have 18, max wives? The pasuk says, "Vayuldu leDavid bonim bechevin." David had 6. He had children in Chevin to 6 wives. Vayibchor Amnon lachinoa ma'Yisrael. So Mishneyu, the second, Kilav laVigail eshes Navala Karmeli. Vashlishis, the third, Avshalom ben Maicha. Varvi'i, and the fourth, Adonia ben Chogis. Vachamishi Shvatyu ben Avitol. Ve'ashishi Yisram le'egla eshes David. Eile Yoldu leDavid bechevin. So the pasuk says that when King David was in Chevin, he had 6 children from 6 wives. So basically he had 6 wives. V'ka'amar Navi, and the Navi says to King David, if it's not enough, v'osif l'cha I'll add to you like this. V'chahina, and like this. Kahina shis v'kahina shis. Ta'avlu tam nisrei. Well, it already says that he has 6 wives, and it says if it's not enough, I'll add like them, meaning another 6. And I'll add v'chahina, and like them, another 6. So 6 and 6 and 6 is 18. Maski Ravina. Ravina says, Ema kahena tarte srei v'chena esim v'arba. Ravina asks, wait, maybe I'll say, look, he has 6. So kahena means another 6, but now you have a total of 12. V'chahena means another, right, twice what you now have, i.e. 12 times 2, which is 24. Right? Esim v'arba, 24. Tanam yochim, we tackle in a brisa to support that. Lo yarba le noshim. You shouldn't have more than 24 wives. And if you darshin from the vav, right, kahena v'chahena, well then arba'im v'shmona havu, then it's taka 48, right? That he has 6, and then kahena another 6 is 12. The vav doubles it to 24, and then the kahena makes it 48. So Tanya Mitaka have a brisa to support that notion. Should not have more than 48 wives. So how come our Tana, the Tana of our Mishnah says just 18. Rav Kana says, Rav Kana makish kohena basu l'chena kama, because we compare the second kohena to the first kohena. Ma kohena kama shis, just like the first kohena, we're talking about 6 wives. Af kohena basu shis, so also the second kohena is ochit, talking about 6 wives. V'avoy Michal, or what about Michal? Right, we listed 6 wives of King David. What about Michal? Why wasn't Michal listed? Amarav says of Egla Zoy Michal, that Egla is Michal. V'lo Shmo Egla, right? And Egla was one of the 6. Why is Michal called Egla? Shechaviva olav ki Egla, because she was so beloved unto King David like a calf. V'chein u'omet, similarly it says Lule charashtim be'eglasi v'gomer. Shimshon says, if you wouldn't have plowed with my Egla, with my calf, and that's a reference to his wife. Michal bone, but one second, did Michal actually have children? But the Pasuk says, "Ule Michal bas Shaul loya lavolad ad yemesa." She didn't have any children until the day that she died. Amar Rav Chizda ad yemesa loya. Rav Chizda says, look, she didn't have any children until the day of her death, but biyomosa, on the day that she died, hoya la, she did have a child on the day that she died. Michte, but the Gemara says, one second. One second. These 6 children to these 6 wives we are referring to, right? These were in Chevron. Vilu Maisid de Michal, the whole sort of event, the whole story. What's the word? Event. The whole thingy that happened with Michal, which caused her to not have any children, only happened later on in Yerushalayim. That Michal looked outside of her window, and she saw King David, Melech David, he was dancing and jumping around before God when they returned the Aron to Yerushalayim. And this was punishment for looking negatively upon King David when he was dancing in front of the Aron. Rather, so when she was in Chevron, she had a child. But once they were in Yerushalayim, then there was the story where she looked down upon King David. From that point on, she no longer had any children. Why are we saying that the king is limited to 18? But after all, by King David, it says, Vaikach David od pilagshim v'noshim b'Yerushalayim. He took even more wives and concubines in Jerusalem. The Malu Yishmoneh, no, but it was just to fill up the quota of 18, not more than that. My noshim umay pilagshim. What's the difference between a wife and a concubine? Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav noshim b'chsuba u'v'kiddushin. That a wife, there's a ksuba document, there's kesef kiddushin. Pilagshim. However, when it comes to concubines, below ksuba u'below kiddushin, there's no kiddushin, there's no ksuba by a concubine, by a pilagish. Amar Rav Amar Rav arba meyos yeladim hayu lo leDavid. King David had 400 children. V'chulam b'nei Yifas Toyar havu hayu, and all of those 400 were the children of Yifas Toyars. That when they went to war, he found people that he was attracted to. This might make sound for a second. Okay, sorry, just moving a chair. Okay, so they were the children of Eishes Yifas Toars, right? The women who he was attracted to when they went to war, and then there's like a whole process of them converting. Umegadle blurious, and they had long locks of hair. Hayu v'chulon yoshvim b'kroin shazav, and they would sit in these golden wagons with mahalchim broshet kayosos, and they would travel. They would go at the head of the troops. Hayu ve'emayu baile agrofen shebez David. They were the fist people, the strong men of the house of David. From Rav Yehuda Omar Rav. Okay, so now this gets into the Maaseh with Tamar and Amnon. So Be'etzem, Amnon and Tamar were 2 children of King David from different mothers. And Amnon was very attracted to Tamar. And Be'etzem, he came up with a scheme where he feigned sickness, where he feigned illness, and then asked for Tamar to, help him out while he was sick, and then he poshit onest her. That's the story. So now, Amar Yehuda Amar Rab, Tomer Basi Sifas Toyar Oisa. So Tomer was Taka, the daughter of an Eshes Sifas Toyar. So basically, Tomer says to Amnon, just ask permission from the king. He won't keep me away from you. Now, if she was the daughter of just like a regular wife, how could a sister be permitted to her? She must have been the daughter of a Yifas Torah. Okay, that Be'etzem Tomer said that she would marry Amnon. Where am I? Okay, all right. That Tomer says Be'etzem that she would marry Amnon. So again, it says speak to King David. He will not keep me from you. Now, if King David, basically, if Tomer's mother, King David's wife, was just a regular, kosher marriage, and they were Jewish and everything, so Miava Sharyale, how could you be permitted to marry Amnon? They have the same father. They're brothers and sisters. So Shmamina Bas Yifas Torah, I said rather she must have been the daughter of Yifas Torah, who was basically her mother, Maicha, was not yet done with her conversion at the time that Tomer was born. Then Tomer had to convert, which means that she technically doesn't have any family relations, and therefore she was able to marry Amnon, and therefore she must have been the daughter of Yifas Torah. Now Amnon had a friend whose name was Yonadav ben Shima Achi David, who was Shima, the brother of David. And Yonadav was very wise. He was wise for evil. And Yonadav says to Amnon, why are you so downtrodden? So basically Amnon says, look, I'm very attracted to my sister Tomer. And Yonadav says, okay, look, feign sickness. And basically Yonadav says to Amnon to feign sickness, and then ask King David that Tomer should come and help him while he's sick. And then she'll prepare food in front of you. And then she basically was frying some food. That she was frying stuff for Amnon, and then basically Amnon onest her. Amnon Sinagedola. And then it says that Amnon afterwards hated Tomer very, very much. Sinagedola Ma'od. My time, how come Amnon hated Tomer so much? Amr Bitzchok Nimok Nikshra Lo Vaso Kros Shavcha. But when Amnon and Tomer were having bia, so then a pubic hair got wrapped around Amnon and basically disabled him permanently. But I mean, all right, what did she do wrong? Look, if it happened to Mela, what did she do wrong? What did she do wrong? Why should he hate her so much? So Ela Emo Kosher Lo Nimo Vaso Kros Shavcha. Rather, Pasha took a pubic hair of hers and tied it around Amnon's penis and permanently disabled him. So she did it intentionally. Ini, is this really so? Rav expanded that a name emerged for the Jewish girls in their beauty, that they have no hair, not in their armpits, nor in their pubic hairs. Shiny Tomer de Basi Fastor Ava. Yeah, but because Tomer was the daughter of a Fastor, so meaning her mother was originally not Jewish, that's why she had pubic hairs. Vatikach Tomer Efa Arosha. And then after this incident, Tomer took ash and put it on her head. And she tore her cloak. Tana Mishmid Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, who started the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, Gadol Gadra Tamar Bosa Shah. That basically when Tamar basically publicized the fact that she was honest by putting ash on her head and tearing her clothes, so then that was like a big point of reflection for all women, basically. Amru, that all the women said, look, if this could happen to the daughter of a king, then certainly it can happen to regular people. If it happens to modest people like Tomer, then to immodest people, certainly this could happen to them. Says that at that time they made a gezerah ala yichud v'ala pnuya, on being secluded and on a pnuya. Yichud d'oraisa. What do you mean that we're going to go weiter for a second. Well, what do you mean that yichud, they made a gezerah about yichud? Yichud is d'oraisa. Dam Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum ben Yotzedek, remez liyichud min haTorah minayin. Where do we have an allusion to yichud in the Torah? Shneimar Zebos says ki yisischa achicha ben imecha, that when your brother, the son of your mother, will convince you to do avodah zarah. V'chi ben ein meses ben av eino meses. Why is it saying davka the brother, the son of your mother? What? Only the son of your mother can convince you to do avodah zarah? The son of your father can't convince you to do avodah zarah? Rather to say to you ben mesyachid im imo. No, it's saying ben imecha to teach a separate drasha, which is that a son is allowed to be alone with his mother. But with regard to any other erva in the Torah, you cannot be secluded with that erva. So we see that yichud is d'oraisa, being alone with an erva. No, so ela ema gazru al yichud de pnuya. So meaning it's not ala yichud va'al a pnuya, because there's no gezerah necessary for yichud, because yichud is d'oraisa, but it's not al yichud va'al a pnuya, but it's that al yichud de pnuya. That they made a gezerah of yichud not to be secluded with an unmarried woman. That yichud applies there as well. After that incident with Amnon and Tamar. Adonia ben Chagis misnase lemor, and Adonia ben Chagis basically lifted him up, lemor, to say, and he proclaimed, Ani emloch, I'm going to be the king. Amar Yehuda Amarav, bikesh lahoma v'lolamto. He wanted to put the crown on his head, but it didn't fit. Vayaslo rechev v'farashim v'chamishim ish rotzim lefonav, and he made chariots and riders and 50 people running in front of him. My Rabusa, what's the chiddush here? Amar Yehuda Amarav, kula netule tchov v'chakuche kapos reglaim havu. That all of these runners, they didn't have a spleen. Apparently, spleen would slow you down, and also they didn't have. They would like tear out all the nerves and stuff in their feet. Super weird, so that they wouldn't feel any pain when they're like running on thorns and things. And I guess they didn't want to wear shoes, or I don't know. Anyways, that was what was special about these soldiers. New Mishnah lo yarbelo susim elikdem merkapto. A king cannot have too many horses, only enough for his cavalry. The kesav zav lo yarbe lo, and he can't have too much gold and silver. Lo meod, he can't have too much gold and silver. Elo kedelite in Espana, just enough to pay for his soldiers' salaries. V'chosav lo sefer Torah l'shmo, and he writes a sefer Torah for himself. Yotze l'machama motzio imo. When he goes out to battle, he brings the sefer Torah with him. Nichnos, when he comes back, machnisa imo, he brings the sefer Torah with him. Yoshev badin, he's sitting in judgment, he imo is with him. Mesav, when he's leaning, u'kenegdo, his opposite him, shenem v'oisto imo v'kora bokoi mechayev, and it will be with him, and we will read from it all of the days of his life. Says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan Rabbi Sallallahu Yarbelo Susim. Okay, so the pasuk says that a king can't have too many horses. Is it possible that he can't even have enough horses for his cavalry and for his riders? Therefore the pasuk says, Lo, to him. Lo eno marbe. No, he can't have too many horses. Avo marbu. No, he can have enough for his cavalry, for his horses, for his riders. Then what's the deal with if we say, we learn it out from Lo, right? He can't have too many for himself, but he can have for his cavalry. So what are we learning out from Liarbelo Susim? Or say Liarbelo, what about Susim? Sus mabat lonin. He can't have horses that are doing nothing. How do you know that even if you only have one horse that is extra, then you're in violation of lo yarbe? The king is in violation of lo yarbe. Therefore the pasuk says, leman harbos sus. Right? Even, right, so you won't have, and it says sus in the singular. So even an individual extra unneeded horse is in violation of lo yarbe. So if you only have, if we're saying that even one sus, one horse that's extra, is in violation of lo yarbe, susim lamali, then why do I need horses plural? What do I learn from horses plural if I'm learning out from sus singular that even in even an individual one you're in violation? Lavor belosais al kosus vosus. Well, susim plural to say that for each and every additional extra horse you'll be in violation of lo yarbe. Time the chaz v'achmana lo. Okay, so in fact the Gemara was, so just because the pasuk says lo, that he can't have too many horses, but he can have for his cavalry, but if it didn't say lo, then halavachi avamino afil k'derich ba'farsh of nami lo. So if it didn't say lo for him, implying but he can't have enough for his cavalry, I would think that he can't have enough for his cavalry. I mean, a king has to have enough horses. So tzricha la'afushe. Well, what it's saying is that sure, without it, I would know that you can have enough. At the very least, you can have at the very sort of the minimum amount necessary for the cavalry, for the riders. But from lo, not for him. What it's saying, we learn a drasha that he can't have extras for himself, but he can have a mechubad cavalry and riders, but not just the baseline. But you can even have a nice augmented. But not to the extent that they're just kind of sitting around extra and doing nothing. We said that he can't have too much gold and silver, just enough for his to pay for his soldiers, for his army. The rabbis taught I can't have too much gold and silver. Is it possible that he can't even have enough to pay his army? He can't have too much gold and silver. But he can't have enough for his army. The Gemara, but what? We learn that out because it says lo, that he can't have too much gold and silver. And if it didn't have that word, then I would think that he can't even have enough to pay his army. That's crazy. Of course he has to have enough for his army. So what we learn out is that no, he doesn't have to have mamish the smallest possible budget for the army. He can have even a sort of generous budget for the army. Now that we're learning out from the word lo for him, both when it comes to the horses and when it comes to having too much money, well then liyarbelo noshim my darashtabe. What do we learn out from lo when it comes to having too many wives? Limute ajotis. Well, he can't have too many wives. He's capped at 18. But a regular person can have, there's no limit to how many wives a regular person can have. Rabbi Yehuda asks, on the one hand, the pasuk says, Vayid Shlomo Arboim Elef Urvis Susim. On the one hand, it says that Shlomo HaMelech had 40,000 rows of horse stalls, the merkavto for his chariots. Okay, Uchziv, and it says Vayid Shlomo Arbos Alofim Urios Susim, but it says that he only had 4,000, not 40,000. Okay, it's also Im Arboim Elef. It's tablo. So if you had 40,000 stables, well, then all you call echad ve'echad ayubo dalit alofim urvos susim. Well, if there were 40,000 stables, then each stable had 4,000 of these rows of stalls. Vim dalit alofim stablos ayu, and if it was 4,000 stables, well then kol echad ve'echad ayulo arboim elef urvos susim. Well, then each of the 4,000 stables had 40,000 rows of stalls. And Rabbi Yitzchak asks, Ein kesef. On the one hand, the pasuk says that in the days of King Solomon, silver was worth nothing. There was so much wealth, there was so much silver that it wasn't worth anything. But at the same time, it also says that King Solomon used the silver in Jerusalem for stones. Okay, so it's not that it was worth absolutely nothing. It was worth the value of stones, at least. Lokash, it's no question. Kan kodem shnosa Shloima es bas Paro, kan lacher shnosa Shloima es bas Paro. Before Shloima married the daughter of Paro, so then there was so much wealth and so much silver that it was worth nothing. But after Shloima married bas Paro, so then sort of the wealth declined slightly. Silver was now worth the value of stones. Still, there must have been obviously plenty of it that they're paving the streets with silver, but at least it had some value. It wasn't like so much that it was like valueless. Okay. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Rabbi Yitzchak b'shosha nosa Shloima es bas Paro. When Shloima married bas Paro, Yard Gavriel, the angel Gabriel went b'notz kona bayom, and he stuck a reed into the sea, in the middle of the sea. And what happened? Ve'ela sirton, and then dirt started to gather around that reed. Ve'olav nivne krach godol sheberomi, and this mound grew and grew and grew, and it turned into Rome. Rabbi Yitzchak says, "Mipnei lo nizgalu taimei Torah." Says Rabbi Yitzchak, how come we do not reveal the reasons for psukim in the Torah? The answer is sharei shtei mikros nizgalu taimei. There are two psukim in the Torah that their reason is written in the pasuk. Their rationale is written. And because the reason was given, the greatest person in the world failed. Shlomo HaMelech failed. On the one hand, it says right? It says don't have too many wives, so that it doesn't lead you to go astray. So Shlomo says, okay, if it's that it doesn't lead astray, I won't go astray. I'll have 2,000 wives, and they won't lead me astray. And it says Ziknas Shlomo, and it was when Shlomo got old. Noshav hitu es levavo, his wives led his heart astray. Uchsiv, and the pasuk says Le'yabilo susim, right? It says don't have too many susim, and it says that, right? So you won't go back to Egypt in order to get more horses. V'amar Shlomo ani abiv lo'oshiv, and Shlomo says I'll have lots of horses, I won't go back to Egypt. Uchsiv atetzim merkavim mitzrayim b'sheish v'gomer, and it says sure enough like a bunch of horses and a delegation went from Egypt with horses and things like that. So that is why the Torah doesn't give the rationale for the mitzvahs in the psukim, because then people sort of abuse them. It leads to problems. Because of Sefer Torah, the Shmo, okay, the Mishnah said that the king has to write a Sefer Torah for himself. Tana was taught uvavad shelo yis noe b'shel avosav. But he needs to write his own Sefer Torah. He can't just inherit his father's and use that. Rabbi says, says Rabbi, even if a person's father leaves for him a Sefer Torah, he still must write his own Sefer Torah. Shneimar says, now write for yourselves this song. Okay, and it's, I guess that we're understanding that to be referring not to Azinu, but to all Sefer Torah, I guess. Eisve Abai, but Abai asks a Kash, B'chosel Sefer Torah L'Shmo, but when wait, is it? No, the V'chosel Sefer Torah is from our Mishnah, right? V'chosel Sefer Torah L'Shmo, Shlo Yisno B'Shal Acherim, so that he can't use others, he has to write his own. Melech in Hejed Lo, this is specifically a halacha by a king, not by a regular person. So lo tzricha l'shtei Torahs. No, when we're saying that the king can't just inherit, but he has to write his own, that's a reference to his second Sefer Torah. Everybody has a mitzvah to write one Sefer Torah, but a king has two Sefer Torah, and that second Sefer Torah must also be written. He must commission it himself. As Mishnah v'Gomer, he has to write a second Sefer Torah. Kosev l'shmo, he writes it for himself. Shtei Torahs, two Torahs, achas sheyotza v'nichneses imo, one that goes everywhere with him, v'achas shemenachas lo b'veis gnozov, and one of them that is kept in his treasury. Also sheyotza v'nichneses imo, the one that goes everywhere with him, goes out, goes in with him. Eino nichnas, skip the parentheses. Eino nichnas ba lo leveis hamerchatz. He does not go with it into the bathhouse. Lo leveis hakisei, not into the bathroom. Shenemar, as the apostle says, va'isa ima v'karabo, that it will be with him and he reads it. Makom haroi likros bo. It's with him in a place that is fit for him to read, not in a bathhouse, not in a bathroom. The Gemara now gets into a very interesting discussion about the Torah and the language of the Torah, the letters of the Torah, the language of the Torah. So kilu, basically, all right, if we take like for example, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So there's like kind of two variables here. There's the language that it's written in, right? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad is of course Hebrew, right? In English it would be, Hear, O Israel, God is our God, God is one, whatever. So Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad is Hebrew. It's not English, it's Hebrew. Now you can write Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad with Hebrew letters, right? Shema would be Shin Mem Ayin. But you can also write Shema in English letters, S-H-E-M-A, let's say, right? So there's basically two variables here. There's the language, right? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad is Hebrew as opposed to English, which would be like Hear, O Israel, whatever. And then there's also the lettering, right? You can write Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad with Hebrew letters, or you could technically write it with English letters, right? S-H-M-A or whatever. So the Torah, so our Torah scrolls, of course, are written in Lashon Kodesh and also with Hebrew letters. Hebrew is referred to here as Ashuris. So our Sefer Torah are in Ksav Ashuris, in Ashuris lettering, and Lashon Kodesh and in Hebrew, not in English. Now, says the Gemara, where am I? Mar Zutra v'itema Mar Ukva. Mar Zutra says, some say Mar Ukva. But Tchila Nitna Torah L'Yisrael. So originally the Torah was given to the Yidden b'chsav Ivri, not with Ashuris lettering, but Ivri lettering. V'Lashon Kodesh, and the language was Lashon Kodesh. Chazav v'nitna Olem b'mei Ezra. But then it was changed during the days of Ezra, B'chsav Ashuris, and then they started writing it not Ksav Ivris, but Ksav Ashuris, which is what we have today, the lettering, V'lashon Arami, but this time it was in Aramaic, the language was Aramaic. Be'eru learned the Israel, but ultimately the Yin settled on Ksav Ashuris, V'lashon Kodesh, what we have today, which is the Ashuris lettering and Lashon Kodesh. And they left for the Adjotis Ksav Ivris, the Ivris lettering, V'lashon Arami, and the Aramaic translation of the Torah. My Adjotis, who are these Adjotis who got the Ksav Ivris and Lashon Arami? Omer of Chizda Kusoi, the Kusis. My Ksav Ivris, what is this Ksav Ivris? Omer of Chizda Ksav Livona. It's Livona writing. Tani we learn about Rabbi Yossi. Says Rabbi Yossi, Roy Ezra Shetinosin Torah Al Yoda L'Yisrael Ilmole Kidmo Moshe. You hear this? Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, delivered the Torah to Am Yisrael. But technically, if Ezra would have been alive then and not Moshe, so Ezra would have received the Torah and delivered it to Am Yisrael. I mean, he was on that level, Kilu. Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, delivered the Torah to Am Yisrael. But technically, it could have been Ezra. That's how high of a level Ezra was. But Moshe, Omer, says by Moses, O Moshe Allah El Elokim, Bezra Omer, who Ezra Allah mi Bavel. Ma Aliyah Omer Kan Torah, Af Aliyah Omer L'Halon Torah. Just like by Moshe, when it says the Aliyah, it's talking about the Torah. Also Ezra, when it says Aliyah, it's a reference to the fact that he could have received the Torah, just like Moses. But Moshe Omer says by Moshe, V'osi tziva Hashem ba'isai l'lamed eschem chukum mishpatim. Bezra Omer, ki Ezra eichel levav lidros as stars Hashem v'lasos l'lamed b'yisrael choku mishpat. Avalpi shelo nidna Torah al yodo, and even though the Torah was not delivered to the Yidden through Ezra, of course Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah. Nishtana al yodo aksav, the writing was changed. As we said, that initially it was Ksav Ivri and Lashon Kodesh, but by Ezra it became Ksav Ashuris and Lashon Arami. Shneimar Zavod says, Uchsava Nishtevon. The writing that changed, that the writing can change. It's written in Aramaic and translated to Aramaic. And it says, it says by Belshazzar that nobody was able to read the writing on the wall and be able to explain it to the king. How come they couldn't read it? Because it changed. And it says, and you will write this Mishneh Torah, writing that is fit to change, that is able to change. Laminika Ashuris. Why is Ksav Ashuris called Ashuris? Because it came from Ashur, it came from Assyria. So we see that according to this opinion, which is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, according to this opinion, the lettering of the Torah changed. Initially it was Ksav Ivri, but then it became Ksav Ashuris. It changed. You hear that? When the Torah was given, it was initially given in Ksav Ivri according to this opinion, and it then changed during the time of Ezra to be Ksav Ashuris. Tanya, we learn about it. So Rebbe Yomi says, Rebbe Batchila b'Ksav Zeh Nitna. So Rebbe disagrees. He says, no. The Torah was initially given, and the Torah was given, it was Ksav Ashuris, like we have today. B'Ksav Zeh Nitna Torah Yisrael. But Kevin Shechatu, when the Yidden sinned, however, Nepach Lo in the Roetz, they forgot how to read it. And that's why nobody was able to understand it when it was written on the wall with Belshazzar. When the Yidden did Tshuva, Hechziru Lohem, so then they remembered once again how to read it. Shneimar, the Apostle says, Shuva levitzorun Assyria atikva gamayom magem mishne oshiv lo. That today I will return to you the essentially, I guess, like the changed lettering. Laminika Shema Ashuris. Why is it called Ashuris? Shemu Usheris b'chsav. It's a very beautiful, gewaldige writing. Mishum ben Elazar Omer, Mishum Reb Eliezer ben Parta, Shalom Mishum Reb Elazar Amodoi, Ksav Zeh Lo Nishtane Kol Nishtana Kol Iker. Says Mishum ben Elazar that this writing never changed. Nothing ever changed. The Torah was when the Torah was given, it was Ksav Ashuris, and the Yidden never forgot it. Shneimar Vavei Amudim Ma'amudim Lo Nishtanu Avavim Lo Nishtanu. When the pasuk says the vavs of the amudim of the pillars, just like the pillars didn't change, also the vavs didn't change. The Yidden with their writing and their language, just like their language didn't change. Also the writing, the lettering never changed. It was always Ksav Ashuris. As Mishnah Torah is also. Well, then what do you do with Mishnah Torah? Because we were saying Mishnah means that it changes. Mishtane. So the Shtei Torahs is talking about the two Torahs of the king. One that goes everywhere with him, and the second one that is in his treasury. The one that goes out and in, goes everywhere with him. He makes it like a amulet. And he hangs it from his arm, as it says that God is placed before me always. My Dorish Bey. According to those other opinions, it says Mishnah Torah is a reference to the fact that the language changes, which means that it's not a reference to having the Sefer Torah that was like in an amulet hanging from his arm. So what do they do with Shivisi Hashem Negdi Summit? How we buy that is for needed Kidirav Chana Bar Bizna, Rav Chana Bar Bizna, or Rav Shimon Chasida Maspal Tzorich Sheyira Atzmo Kilu Shchina Kenegdo. That a person who's praying, he should see himself as though the divine presence is opposite him. Shneimar, the Apostle says, Shivisi Hashem Negdi Summit, that God must be placed before me always. The Reb Shimon the Omer Ksav Zeh Lo Nishtane my Lo Kahalim Ksav Lemikra. Also, now according to Reb Shimon Elazar, who says that the lettering never changed and it was never forgotten or anything like that, well then how come by Belshazzar nobody was able to read it? Well, Amra Gematria Ichtuv Lon. It was written in Gematria. Yitas Adoch Pugchemat. My parishlu, Mino Tkelu Farsin. Basically, it says Mino Tkelu Farsin. If you do that in Atbash is like you switch. Aleph is interchangeable with Tav, Bet is interchangeable with Shin, right? Gimel, Reish, Dalet, Kuf, etc. So then Yud is Mem, Tes is Nun. Where am I? Tav is Aleph, which is Minei, and then basically, if you do that for all the letters, it says Minei, Tkel Ufarsin. Minei means Mana Elah Malchusach V'Hashlama Lach, that God counted the length of your kingship and it is done, it's over. Tkel, weighed, Tkel to B'Znai Ishtakchas Chaser, that it was weighed and it turns out that it is lacking. Parsin Prisas Malchusach V'Haves L'Madai Faris, your kingship is going to be divided up among Madai and Persia. Ushmola Meseshmo Mimto Nankfei Aaron. Oh gosh. How do I say that? Basically, if you take the first letter, right? If you take the first letter of each of those three like groups, so you have Mem Nun Aleph, which is Minay, and again Mem Nun Aleph, which is also Minay, and then Tuf Kuf Lamed, and then Vav Pei Reish Mem Yud Nun is basically again Minay Tkel Ufarsin. Rabbi Yochanan Omar Onam Likas Nisrfu, again, so that Onam is basically Minay backwards, Onam Likas is Tkel, etc. Then Ufarsin backwards. Rav Ashi Omar Nema Ktal Pursan, basically take the first two letters and switch them around. So basically Nema is Minay, etc. Basically the point is nobody understood what it meant because it was written in like code. That is why. Friends, that was Daf Chaf Aleph. That was Daf Chaf Aleph in Masechtas Sanhedrin. That was a big daf. We talked about kings having too many wives, having too many horses, having too much wealth, and all sorts of interesting stories there. And with Amnon and Tamar, and we got into writing Sifrei Torah and the language that the Sefer Torah was originally written in, and if it changed or not, and Ezra. Very, very interesting things. Peace out.